On honeymoon. Good. Yeah, it was cold. It was cold. Listen, yeah, Austin.
Across the way. So if across the hall, sorry, over in the planning department. So if you're here for planning, please proceed to that particular area. Number two, we would just ask, because we have a lot of folks in here tonight, to put your phones on vibrate. That would be wonderful. And number three, we are going to begin in a few minutes. We were hoping a couple of our council members are on their way. So just a few more minutes. Thank you.
It's a class sign.
Good evening, everyone. We'll open the finance meeting November 21st. It is Thursday at 6:08. I would ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Jim Conroy, could you lead us in the pledge?
Be happy to pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. We'll do a roll call. Councilmember Gully on his way. Councilmember Garrett, I believe, is on her way. Councilmember Parator absent. Councilmember Cummings.
Here.
Councilmember December.
Present.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Here.
Council President Mantello is here. We have 4 present, 3 absent. We'll go right into the public forum, but before we do, I do want folks to know that the towing contract, Resolution 81, we are going to withdraw that at the request of the administration. A little bit of work needs to be done on that. So we will consider it at a later meeting. And just so folks are aware, we have a regular meeting. Anything passed this evening will go to the regular meeting on December 5th. And then we have another December 19th finance meeting. We intend to have a special meeting after the finance meeting on December 19th. So I will withdraw at the request of the administration. Resolution 81 is the sponsor, okay? That's number 1. Hello, Mr. Gully. Mr. Gully is present for the record. Very good to see you, sir. We have 5 present, 2 absent. Additionally, we passed an amendment, Ordinance 112, at the regular meeting in November. Andy has informed me that as part of the CHIPS program, I believe, there were monies that were accidentally left off. So bear with me, we are amending Ordinance 112. It was in an email from Andy last week. So bear with
No,
me.
it's on the agenda tonight.
So by unanimous consent, I would request to add this to the agenda this evening. Do I have a motion? We have to amend 112, okay? So we have to add it back, but we have to add it to the agenda. Okay? To amend it. It's already passed, but we have to amend it.
No.
in the meeting.
No. I just want to amend the Schedule A,
Oh, okay, the
Yeah.
attachment.
the attachment.
Okay, fair enough. So,
So this is not the one that
Okay,
passed
cool.
last time. This is
All right.
an amendment.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Andy. Fair enough. Okay, so let's go right into the public forum. And we would ask folks, Mara, did anyone sign the?
I think one person signed up. But
Okay. We would ask folks to state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak on any item on this evening's agenda. And as stated, just for the record, Resolution 81 is withdrawn. So other than Resolution 81, please come up to the podium. You'll have 5 minutes. Just state your name and address, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
the person who signed up?
It's him. He signed it. That's it, right there. Yeah.
Jim, you signed. Look at you. Boy Scout.
So, my name is Jim Scully, and I live at 122nd Street in downtown Troy. I'd like to speak about ordinance number 115, transferring the option to certain property, 1 Monument Square, to the Troy Local Development Corporation. Long history on this site. I don't know how many councils I've spoken in front of about this over 20 years or so, but what we ended up with is a situation where the community got together, there was a charrette, and after all these years, their constituents actually came up with a consensus of what they wanted to do with 1 Monument Square. There's a public component and a private component, and the concept was such that we interacted between Monument Square, a plaza, Esplanade down to the river, into the park. And the private component was to be designed and determined. Some of the things there's a clock tower. You know, obviously funding the clock tower would be an issue, and time is money. So, sorry about the pun. Yeah. So, but as a practical result, what happened was really ended up with a quasi public-private partnership. So there's a role for the private developer moving forward, and there's a role for the city, the mayor's office, and the council, and the finance committee to work together to move the project forward as your constituents desired from the charrette. So it's a little bit different than the last time we went around, where there was just a straight out sale of the property to the developer of the potential theater. So this is kind of a different animal from that in some ways. And, you know, the council and the mayor's office, they have a lot to do. They have a lot of other things to do. This is going to require some focus and a lot of time. There's a lot of things that have to be done. There's a lot of things that have to be contracted out before any of this gets developed. And time is an issue here. And so any way we can facilitate this process makes a lot of sense to me. You know, instead of going back once a month to meet to make a decision on what happens next, or agreeing upon a contract that has to be let for either an engineer or a legal contract, another entity would be able to facilitate that much better, mainly because of the role of city government versus the role of a development entity or the role of a private developer. Certainly, you guys have a lot on your plate every day. A strong LDC or a development company, corporation, would really benefit all of us. Showing that we can do this. We're opening a door to economic state development, a conduit to the governor's office. Bad example, but if you look at an agency in Schenectady, it's been pretty successful. And Schenectady, on election day, got $10 million from the governor's office because they knew how to do development. It's not your role to do development. That's not what you do. You represent us, you legislate, you do oversight, and and development's not your forte, especially something this size and this consequential that affects so many people. So I'd just like to speak in support of this and ask for your vote tonight to move this forward, because just like the clock is, time is money, and the time is now to do this. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Would anyone else like to speak on any item on the agenda?
All right, so I'm speaking on
If you
the
don't mind, just hold,
Sorry,
just
I'm a
whip it right
tiny
there.
human. Okay, I'm speaking on the same item. My name is Lauren Goey. I'm the manager at Ashley Met Carmen. I'm here speaking on behalf of Carmen. We are all longtime residents of Troy, and we believe in the city and we invest in the city. AMC has just opened 2 retail locations, and we are constantly urging our customers to visit and experience Troy and its growth. We are strongly in favor of the city giving the option to transfer 1 Monument Square to the local development corporation. Its success can help the city, its failure can hinder its growth. Short, sweet, to the point.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I liked it.
Perfect.
All right.
Thanks.
And you do not, Jim, get her time. Sure, hi, Jim. I was talking to Jim.
Thank you very much. My name is Jim Conroy. I'm a resident of 125 2nd Street. I also am a commercial realtor specializing in Troy properties. And I too want to encourage the city council to move along with the plan that has already been in place. The idea of transferring or optioning the property to the LDC was included in the RFP. It's not something new. It's not something different. This is something that has been done in the past by the city of Troy in developing properties. It's not something new. So it's following a tried and true format. And as Jim Scully mentioned, it's also providing the kind of focus that a development like this requires.
And that is not saying that there won't be opportunity for input or evaluation throughout. I have seen the LDC work. I know that their meetings are open to the public. There's plenty of opportunity for input. With a project of this nature, I'm certain that there's going to be additional requirements like the charrette that developed this whole strategy to begin with. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for council, the city council, and the general population to still have a very strong input in the final product. So for simplicity purposes and the ability to move the project along a little bit more expeditiously, I would encourage you to do the transfer or the option. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you. Okay, would anyone else like to speak?
Hi, I'm Mark Shipley. I live on 2nd Street as well. I ran a business for 25 years in the city of Troy. And I'm also here to encourage you to keep this process moving. And I was also on the selection committee to choose the development partner to recommend to move forward with. And what I'd like to really say tonight is a couple things. One is our group got together and met with all the developers. We've read all the RFQs, and we had a unanimous decision to go with Brownstone, with Hoboken Brownstone Group. There were a number of reasons, but the things that I think really made our group like them the most was these people came and they participated in the charrette as well. They listened to all the public comments. When they came and made their presentations to us, they clearly understood the spirit of what the people in Troy are looking for from this property. They've done it before many times. They've done projects where they've worked with people in a community that were both pro and against what they were trying to do from the beginning and work through that with them. All the things that we're really looking for here in Troy, they have experience with. They've done waterfront development. They've done multi-use development. They put their own money in it. They're not looking for the city to fund the whole thing. They have financing behind them. And they have a principal that lives in the community that wants this thing to be part of it. And I, as a citizen, would really hate to see this project get slowed down like the Atrium did for 20 years and then end up with something like that. I think we have an opportunity here to really have an important building, important property developed in a way that will make not everybody in Troy happy, because I don't think that's possible, having been involved in Troy for a long time. But I think the spirit of what they bring to the table will make as many people happy as possible through this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Would anyone else like to speak?
How's it going? Vic Christopher, 12 2nd Street, downtown Troy, business owner, property owner. I thank you guys for being here. I didn't even think these guys were going to show up at this point. I thought they were out of the project altogether. I mean, if you look back at the past decade, we've all played a small role in getting to this point in a positive way and a negative way. Number one, we've devalued the site. It's basically worthless because nobody in their right mind would want to touch it. These guys have a unique experience in that they actually believe that they can do the project. So that puts them in a class by themselves. I'm the former economic development coordinator of the city, and I'm part of the problem. And I was up here 10 years ago talking about that site as a game changer, the thing that's going to be the catalyst to take this city to the next level, the most valuable waterfront real estate in the capital region. We hyped it up too much, and everybody bought into the hype. We hyped this thing up so much that nothing was good enough for the site. And in that time, I mean, this is the 5th proposal that was selected, but each time there were 3 and sometimes 4 other proposals. And all of that took money. You know, it takes a lot of money to do an architectural rendering, to do a construction budget, to do a financial prospectus. And all the money that has been spent on paperwork in the past decade, if you added that all up, it would be in the multi-millions. And the previous speaker mentioned the Atrium. That was a project that languished for 2 decades. It had a similar feel to it than this one, you know, in that people just couldn't get together on it. And initially, when they embarked on that urban renewal, there were funds for that. And all of those funds went to paperwork. Now, I can tell you who's not going to be happy if we move this project forward. It's all the architects and the designers and the surveyors and all the people that made a ton of money drawing buildings that will never be built on that site. And they're all beautiful, by the way. Every one of them would have been a great addition to our downtown. And for me now, I'm hearing about the economics not working for this particular proposal. But the last one was an economic engine. It was a movie theater. But that wasn't good enough for everybody. So we went to the community, and the city of Troy invested $200,000 to get that type of input. And now we're going to abandon all of that work as well to now be once again concerned about the economic impact of that site. We're running in a hamster wheel, people, and it's sad. This is the type of comedy that is on TV and shows in like Parks and Rec. Like, that's us. I mean, it would be comedy if it wasn't so tragic. And nothing proposed is going to be good enough for most people. And I'm not saying I'm in love with, you know, this particular project as opposed to the one before that. I mean, I happen to think most people like the first project, which was eerily reminiscent of where we're at in December. And Council President Mantello made some comments about having a lame duck council and letting the next council come in and kind of chart the course for this project moving forward. But I was a part of the Tutungin administration in December 2011, and I sat down with Mayor Tutungin and Sandra Little, and it was December. And we had the approval to sell that parcel to Nigro. The council actually approved the sale. All we had to do is put it through planning. And we said, you know what, the right thing to do is to let the next administration own this project. And it was the biggest mistake we made because they submarined it instantly. Now, I'm not saying the next council is going to do that, but this thought of not moving the thing forward because the next group is coming in, you have a job to do. And I think this council's done a pretty good job, actually. This council has provided pretty good government from my standpoint. I really don't take issue with anything in the past couple of years that you guys have done. So why not end on a high note and just move this project forward? It ain't going to be perfect, but right now anything is better than nothing. And we've just been seeing a whole lot of nothing for a real long time.
Thank you, Dave. Would anyone else like to speak on the agenda? Hi there.
Hi, I'm Dr. Douglas Lenz. I'm also a resident of Troy down on 2nd Street. And I also was on the selection committee for this proposal. And I just want to concur. I support moving ahead. I think it's the right thing to do. I went to all the charrettes and I was really impressed with Hoboken Brownstone. They went to also all the charrettes. So they came here with a real willingness that they've also, their past behavior, they did it on their other projects. And I would anticipate they would continue to do it on this project because past behavior is prediction of your future performance and things like that. So I would expect that they would continue to involve the community, as we've heard mentioned before too. And I'm very excited about what they want to do for us because they've done something very exciting in the past for Hoboken and other projects that are very similar to what we're doing. So as a resident here and citizen, I'm very excited to have been a part of this, and I hope it can continue to move forward and we can really get something that we can be proud of in that site. And I believe Hoboken Brownstone is going to be very capable of doing that for us.
Great, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Evening. I'm Russ Brooks. I live at 37 First Street and have a property at 155 River Street we're developing. I'd like to express my support for the option to transfer the property through the LDC. I think that Hoboken Brownstone has done great work in other cities and very happy to have them coming here to Troy. I would also like to remind the council that the option to transfer the property through the LDC was in the RFQ. And if there was a problem with this method of transferring the property, it should have been voiced quite a while ago. And at the last minute here, we should continue with the path that we're on that was laid out in the RFQ. Thank you.
Thank you. You're fine. Oh, don't let Jackson in. I called you out, Jackson.
Hi, my name is Deanna Del Paz. I'm a resident at 275 River Street. I'm also with NAI Platform, which is a commercial real estate brokerage service, and I focus predominantly on Troy. You can't get too much closer to being at Monument Square from where I live. I look at the river every day, and I'm right there. I work to bring people into this city, and I'm very excited at this project, and I'm very much in support of transferring it to the LDC. I also actually happen to attend almost every single LDC meetings for years now, so I'm one of the only ones that ever do. And I can tell you that group is strong, and they are very open to hearing others' opinions. I have voiced my opinion here and there, and it is heard. So if there's any issues with transparency, I can assure you that that committee is very open to hearing what needs to be heard. And I'm absolutely in support of this project going into that direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Deanna.
Hi, good evening. I'm Zach Conley. I actually don't live here in the city. I live in Delmar. However, I own a business that moved to the city in March, and we've loved it ever since we've been here. One of the things that we find is so great about Troy is its kind of evolution of what's happening to the downtown and the areas now. I recently attended a speaker in the Innovation Garage here over in Troy who talked about Pittsburgh's downtown and their waterfront and the redevelopment there, and talked about how this is a long haul type of project, the waterfront development. It's not an individual one building or a couple buildings that'll be built on Monument Square or in any city anywhere. It's a project for someone who has a vision to do more with the city, more economic development. And I really think, from having talked to some of the people at Hoboken Brownstone, that I believe that's the kind of partnership they're looking for the city itself. So, I'd like to voice my approval of the option to transfer the property. I also want to say, although I don't think I'm saying anything new to the council here, I'm sure you all understand, but for people in the community, my business is in commercial real estate. We have offices all over the United States, all over the globe, really. And a transfer or an option to transfer like this from the city or municipality owning property to an LDC is not an uncommon way to transfer a property and to have a property developed this way. So, again, I don't think I'm saying anything new to anyone sitting around the table, but for the community, I think it's important for them to understand that this isn't unique, a unique way to do this. So again, I voiced my approval for the option to transfer and for Hoboken Brownstone.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Would anyone else? Hey, Dan.
Good evening.
Good
How is
evening.
everybody?
Where's the quesadilla?
Dan Fremont, resident, First Street, Troy, business owner. I think we're at a time where we're probably overdue to move this forward. When I saw the headlines, other people saw the headlines. They came and asked me questions that I couldn't answer. So I went and asked questions, and I come to find out that this process isn't new. This information was available back in April. Now I know I didn't do my due diligence because I missed it. But I now have a better understanding of this process.
I've been to the charrettes. I've seen what's gone into developing this. And I've watched all these past processes come and go. And it was, well, we've earned the hashtag Troy Crazy because of it. And I don't want to do that again because we really don't need to be hashtag Troy Crazy. It's a good project. It's good to see the city move forward. It's time that we just did it. So I'm here to voice my support, and I hope we get something accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. I thought you were retired.
I've retired, but I still have a pulse. I kind of want to echo what Dan had to say. You know, it's this January 1st will be 9 years since the first wrecking ball hit the city hall.
Council President, I'm sorry. Can we just get your
Oh,
name?
sorry, David. It's Joe Fama. I'm Joe Fama. I live at 150 2nd Avenue in Lansingburg. Well, here we are at proposal number 5 for this site. And to be honest, the particulars of what you're talking about, the LDC and so on, I'm not even familiar with. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about getting off on the 5th version on the right foot. Every time we've gone on, it seems to me that it's gotten more rancorous. More people get invested in the site, they get more determined, and I think that's terrific. I'm not trying to suggest that people should back off and just let this happen. People need to throw their ideas out. The process that we went through earlier was a good one. Public input makes projects stronger. But there's a moment in time where constructive criticism turns into toxic arguing. And I'm wondering if we haven't crossed that bridge maybe too many times in the 5 proposals that have been brought up before. And I think some of the developers who have walked away from these projects have been confused and abused. And I'm just saying, I think this is a great time as we start our 5th attempt to fill this site for the city council to lead in a more positive attitude toward a constructive and optimistic approach to this project. I don't know if it's a good or bad project yet. That needs to be explored. People need to be diligent. People need to work hard. People got to be a little nicer. They got to be a little more positive. They have to approach this project like the developer might be the right guy and might be a partner for us to get us what we finally want. We want a good project. We want design criteria. We want all of that. But geez, yeah, we don't want Troy to be crazy. And I think the city council could lead on that. And I look forward to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Would anyone else like to? Thanks, Steve.
Hi, Steve Riddler, 185 2nd Street. I had 2 options tonight. The first was to go to a workshop in abandoned buildings in Tripp. I went there and then decided I probably should come here because this might make a difference. So I have a long history with this site from my work experience, but I just want to talk now quickly and very briefly. You've heard it from everybody. LDC, the approach is very common throughout the state, throughout the country, and is something that could really help take projects of this complexity forward. I think that there is going to be plenty of opportunity for public comment through not just the LDC process, but the review processes that it still has to go through with the planning board and any types of funding decisions that you guys have to make in the future. So I see absolutely no reason why this shouldn't go forward as proposed tonight. And as you know, I will definitely come out if things don't go the way they should, as I have done on other projects recently. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Would anyone else like to speak?
Hi, everyone.
My name is Michelle Rogat. I'm a Troy resident at 9 Linden Ave. I'm also a member of the city's Sustainability Task Force in Troy, and I'm here to voice my support for Resolution 82 for the city to join the currently forming community choice aggregation that's happening in the Capital Region, and to sign an administrative agreement with MEGA, the Municipal Electric and Gas Alliance. The Sustainability Task Force also recommends MEGA as an administrator and for Troy to join in this currently forming CCA. There are several reasons for this, but really it is a great opportunity for the city to help residents save money on their electricity bills. And if we don't join now, we could miss out on a great opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on any item on the agenda? All right, we will close the public forum section. We'll go right into the agenda. We'll go over local laws. There's none. We'll go into Ordinance 109, ordinance authorizing and directing sales by the proposal sale method of city-owned real property. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember December. On this, folks, a couple things. So Ordinance 110 declares surplus property for 4 properties on this list. You'll see.
Not property lines.
I mean, Steve can speak to this, but my understanding is the surplus of the paper streets that are around these properties, but we then have to sell these paper streets totally separately.
Correct. They would be abandoned tonight and then go back on they'd be on the list for future. Although there are parcels tonight that are adjacent to these.
Yes, yeah, so, but they're all connected. It kind of hinges.
They're interrelated, but the transfers on these can occur.
Yep, I got you. So what I want to talk about, folks, in 109 and 110, at the end of Euclid Ave, there are these 4 properties that are in 109 up for sale to the Rensselaer Land Trust. 110 abuts these properties, paper streets, which Chris Whalen sent a memo basically saying to surplus. Very, very long story short, all I am asking, I would like to pull out the 4 properties to the land trust for a meeting between the land trust, the property owners, the administration, the council, whoever would like to attend, maybe Colleen or the incoming council member, just to ensure the residents in that area. Rensselaer Land Trust wants to do good things, a pocket park, a trail. However, the residents haven't really been brought in the loop and they're a little concerned. They heard about it kind of last minute, so I just want to, wait. If you don't mind, we can put it on the next, maybe December 19th. We have a special meeting during that time, schedule the meeting, get all the parties together, and just ensure that they're on board. That's all.
I guess, Council President?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with, I don't think a couple-week delay will cause problems for it. I do think this is all very much tenant development project. And I don't know that it's, I've spoken directly with the property owner you're talking about, and I think this plan is actually very much based around his concerns and I think it'll address his needs and concerns well. I'm wondering whether maybe we could just move it through this and plan to table it at the regular meeting, so that we can.
Well, we have a finance coming up. I just don't want residents up there.
Sure.
Yes, Councilman.
Cool. Can you let the councilman finish?
Yeah. Well, the idea there is, my sense is that we can allay any possible concerns between now and the regular meeting. I know there's a Thanksgiving in the middle of that, but we've still got that that week right after Thanksgiving. I think it's likely that any possible concerns could be dealt with pretty easily there. So I mean, I'm happy to basically say if we don't address the concerns by the December 2nd meeting, or 5th meeting, thank you, we don't get these concerns addressed by the December 5th meeting, and obviously they're welcome to come to the December 5th meeting and address it with us there as well. But the idea of scheduling something up there makes some sense.
Yeah, I'm not looking to get the folks down City Hall. What I'd like to do is a neighborhood meeting. They've requested it.
And I guess, I don't know who they is. I've talked to all the property.
No, it's not just the immediate Councilmember Cummings. It's folks on Euclid. They just don't know.
Right.
So it's just
I mean,
a
so
matter
again, it makes
of
sense to have a
bringing
conversation
them in the loop. And all I'm suggesting, just, we can move forward tonight, but if, I don't see a meeting happening between now and the 5th with Thanksgiving, so we may have to delay it till the 19th. All I'm asking, get them all on the same page. It's a good project, but I don't want folks concerned about a good project. That's all.
No, I mean, that makes sense. So.
Councilmember.
Yeah, I would support moving this forward tonight at the finance committee meeting and then withholding it from future meetings until there's significant public input.
Good, okay.
Maybe a special, even a public meeting or hearing on the project.
Yeah, and, just as long as the neighborhood's brought in the loop, so,
Sure.
Okay, cool. Yep.
Sure. Does that
Councilmember.
does that neighborhood have an existing? Do they meet regularly?
No,
Okay.
they don't. No, they don't have a monthly, like, Little Italy and those folks. When an issue arises, they'll get together. That's about it.
Chair?
Yes, Councilmember.
How will we notify the neighbors of this meeting? How do we get that word out?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different households there. How do we do that to get them at the
Yeah,
to get results?
Yep, I've talked to a couple of folks. They're willing to spread the word. So they'll spread it, social media, things like that. So we'll, confer with a couple of folks, schedule a meeting, schedule it. I don't see it happening between now and the 5th. If it does, that's great. And then just get the folks together to ensure they're all on the same page. Okay? Cool. All right. Now to the Property Review Committee folks. Were there any major issues that you saw with any of the properties? And I do notice there's this Tamaz, and he has 2 properties. What's your feelings and sense on some of these sales? Were there any red flags, anything that you saw?
No, the gentleman on 10th had applied for both those properties and had the financial ability to move forward those projects. We felt that would be the best option for those 2 pieces.
Okay.
There was only one bidder on the other one, and it was similarly a similar bid with also not
And just for the record, Akeem Cummings, no relation?
relation.
Okay, very good.
One of them.
Very good. I thought maybe it was a typo at first, but. All right, any other?
The only other
Yeah.
thing I'll note is the 7th Ave parcel, or the first one,
Yeah.
183 7th Ave. That is not the high bid. We did get a $20,000 bid on that, but the sense was that there's significant foundation issues that may not be able to be dealt with by that bidder. I don't know if any further conversation has happened with the high bidder on that one.
Sharon, do you mind
No.
popping up?
This is a point of information. Are you talking about the David Willett?
173,
Yeah.
yeah.
David
Or
Willett,
183.
he's a mason and obviously very able to deal with the foundation issues
Correct.
in-house. So that was a selling
Mhm.
point for us. But I wanted to just confirm no further contact with the gentleman who bid more, but may not have had that ability to.
There's not been
Correct.
any?
There's not been any contact.
Okay, owner occupied or no?
No.
Well, the other one claimed to be, although he's from Brooklyn.
Okay. All right,
One more thing, I'd like to remove the last one on the list, the Monroe Court.
the vacant land.
Yep. As much as I want to
May
sell
ask
it.
why?
I gave him the opportunity to pay the taxes on the property that he currently owns, and he did not.
Okay,
He's also showed up on the Albany County list twice,
Okay.
so.
all right. So we'll amend that. Any other Sharon? Other
That's
than
it.
that?
Nope.
Okay, cool. Anyone else? Discussion? Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. I'll make a motion to amend the list to delete Monroe Court. Do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Gully, all in favor on the amendment? Aye. Opposed? And then on the amended ordinance, do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Gully, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings, discussion. I do just want to say, a lot of time goes into the Property Review Committee, and I really want to thank the council members, Councilmember Cummings and Councilmember Gully. They literally will spend hours with Sharon and code enforcement, and I believe Monica is in that meeting, or Deputy Mayor, so there's a super lot of time put in. I appreciate it immensely, and I think the homework has gotten much better on the foreclosures. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, ordinance 109 carries 5-0. Ordinance 110, ordinance declaring certain city-owned property as surplus and directing the comptroller to dispose of said property. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Gully, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings, and I would just ask that this, at least the conversation, be included with the other 4 properties as part of the neighborhood meeting.
And
Okay.
I'll just confirm, I assume these will be subdivided at some point. That's not explicitly in our resolution, but you'll do that on your own?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ordinance 110 carries 5-0. Ordinance 111, ordinance declaring certain city-owned property as surplus and directing the comptroller to dispose of said property. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember December, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second, Councilmember Kennedy, discussion. These are just for the folks out there, 5 vehicles, 3 Crown Vics, a Chevy Impala, and a Nissan Maxima, if anyone's interested. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ordinance 111 carries 5-0. Ordinance 112, ordinance transferring funds within the 2019 general fund budget. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember December, do I have a second?
Second that.
Second, Councilmember Kennedy, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Isn't this the amended? That's what I thought.
Andrew?
Andy, didn't you amend this prior? You amended, this is the
That's
amended,
it.
what's on the agenda. Yes.
On Monday morning, I had sent out an amended schedule, I had memo in support,
It's
adding,
okay. Yep, all good. All right. 5-0, ordinance 112. Ordinance 113. Ordinance amending the Code of Troy, Chapter 216-7, for Park Community Golf Fees. Councilmember Cummings, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy, do I have a second?
Second.
You can't second your own.
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully. Discussion, just so folks are aware, these are golf fees going up. Do you want to add anything?
Obviously, we had some discussions last week about the profitability or lack thereof of the golf course. And I think we've got a plan over the next few years to continue to enhance operations. This is part of that. They did an analysis of fees at similar golf courses in the area. This remains lower than many, so it's still a good deal for folks, but it gets us a little closer to the market on it. So I think it's a good step for now, and we'll continue working with the golf course to build into the future.
And Councilmember Cummings, the league fees, was that added to this? any of the late fees change or just obviously the cards and all of that will be part of
Council President,
council member.
the cart fees are always separate. The league fees are based on how many weeks a league exists, and it's simply the greens fees for each of those weeks compiled together for the league fee.
Beautiful, thank you. All
Council
right.
President?
Yes,
These were
Councilmember.
the recommendations that came through during the general
Yes.
services budget?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nope, these are the same ones, so they are in the budget. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 113 carries 5-0. Ordinance 114, ordinance authorizing the city to create capital project and amending the capital projects fund and general fund budgets to allow funding for said capital project. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Cummings, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Councilmember Kennedy, on the discussion, this is a capital project account for Campbell Ave Spring Out. Further discussion? Monica, do you mind just real quick, giving a real quick update? Obviously, the RFP was awarded. What's the timeline? And I did see some new signage up there.
Yeah, so we did go out to bid. The bids came back. We have not awarded yet because we're still doing our due diligence, making sure that all of the information that was supplied by the lowest bidder in a competitive sealed bid is accurate. And then once we award, we're looking, the reason why there's new signs up is we wanted to make sure that there was permanent signage through the winter, hopefully to help with snow plowing operations. We anticipate the work to be done probably, hopefully they can do some work and then we'll finish up in the spring.
Okay. Councilmember Cummings.
How much has any of this paid for by insurance or?
Yes, this is, so the $183,000 was the anticipated amount. So yes, some of this will be covered by insurance. But lovely, when you do a replacement of a signal, you have to bring it up to current, technology and current standards. So we'll have to negotiate most likely with the insurance company to see what they'll cover. Because what came down is obviously very different from what's being put back up. This is going to be an intelligent system, so it'll actually be able to anticipate the traffic, be able to switch the lights on its own. But we're also doing some road improvements with this as well too, to satisfy our complete streets requirements.
And Monica, they will, I take it, do the design, et cetera, in preparation of the actual construction before the spring? Like, what's the actual timeline for?
So we've already done the design, the engineering docs. Yeah, we actually did that with CHA, and our engineering company. So that's what it went out to bid. So it's actual. So this is just purely construction.
Okay. And so 445 is the budget for it, 183 is the insurance activity.
Council President?
Yes, council member.
I just want to, this is part of my district and it impacts a lot of neighbors in the east side and South Troy. And so I just want to commend this project moving forward. I know there were a lot of questions on what it should look like and all of those sorts of things, but I am happy to see this moving forward. We need to make sure we take care of this. So thank you.
Welcome.
Lots of folks are watching. All right, further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 114 carries 5-0. Ordinance 115. We'll take a motion in second, and then I believe that planning is here to do a proposal, a presentation. So Ordinance 115 is an ordinance authorizing the disposition of an option to acquire certain city property to the Troy Local Development Corporation, LDC, with respect to the 1 Monument Square site. Councilmember Cummings, at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Gully. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second, Councilmember Kennedy. And now I'll hand it off to Steve Strikeman and
All right.
take it away.
So because there was such a groundswell of support in support of this, I might be changing. I have a presentation here that's going to easily take 10 minutes talking about what we're doing because I think there was a lot of misunderstanding out there in the community about what is being proposed here. So basically, Dylan Turek, my Director of Development, is going to talk about some slides. Andy Brick, who's with Donald Z. He's a lawyer with Donald Z. He is our attorney for land use matters such as zoning and planning, and has also represented us on the on previous issues with Monument Square. And so he can talk you through exactly the legalities of why we're doing this. But again, just to go back to the beginning of all this it's not up. Well, I'm going to go off of it. In the RFQ back in April, we talked about the option to go through the TLDC with this option so that the development could occur because there was no request for price. There were no bids. So the city couldn't award it to the highest bidder or the best use. So there's a creative way around that, which is basically through the local development corporation, the city loses no control, and it's an open and public process. So, all right, I'm just going to keep going because I got a presentation. So basically, we all know the site. We have taken out the land on the northwest corner of it where there was potentially a park piece of it, and that's no longer in it. And we are retaining 50 feet of frontage along the river, except at the northwest corner where you can see it tapers down a little bit. And that's right, pointing the right way. And that is to accommodate public parking that the community wanted. So it had to go out there a little bit so you can get 2 full bays of parking there. But it still allows the city to retain a required amount, so it's not a sale of city-owned property or waterfront property. Just to say, obviously there were challenges with the previous proposals that we had, and I'm not going to go through them all. Each one had its unique issues, and it was because we were going through a request for pricing, and everybody was coming in with a project. And you had a month or 2 months to get it approved or to get it designed and delivered to us. What we decided we would do instead, you can go to the next slide, is we had this public visioning process. We said, let's go to the public, find out what people want on this site, and then instead of asking for proposals on what to build, let's say, here's what you need to include in this. Let's show us your qualifications. And I forgot to give accolades to Hoboken Brownstone, but everybody else here did it. They attended the sessions, and they really had the most promising proposal, experience in waterfront development, and specifically with public spaces involved in those projects. The 3 things people wanted: considerable public space, the grand staircase down to the William Chamberlain Park, and access to public parking. Dylan?
Hi, everybody. So again, my name is Dylan Turek. We really just wanted to kind of go over a couple of the differences between how we're doing it this time and how we've done it in the past, because I think this is really important to sort of understand and to make sure that we really have a good grasp on. Especially based on some of the things that we've been hearing and some of the feedback, because this has always really been an open process. So again, an RFP process, and please interrupt if you have any questions, because I want to make sure we all get these points. This is kind of important. An RFP process is really simple. It's usually at an arm's length transaction between a municipality who says, I want this thing built, and they've got a thing that they want built, and they know what the variables are, and they say, this has got to get built a certain way. We have an idea of what it's going to cost, and we'd really like to see this thing get built, but we're going to put it out to bid as per our laws, and we're going to get 6 mostly qualified, I'm sure they'll all be qualified contractors one way or another. We'll put a price on that, and they'll have a proposal of how to get it done, and we'll get that back, and we'll be able to judge. But that really only works in certain types of transactions where you can put forward a proposal for a project that you really understand and grasp well. When you're talking about real estate development on complex deals, it's a bit like asking a developer to take a dart in the dark and throw it against the wall and just pray that they hit the target of what you can build for economic sense, and at the same time hits all the marks that all the stakeholders are looking to get, and then the public wants to see as well. And it's basically an impossible task. Not to mention the fact that you've got 6 other people that are probably in on this and they're competing against, and you probably have a month to put this magical proposal together somehow that's going to have everything pre-baked in it and ready to go. Because ultimately, if what you guys pass as city council as part of this LDA or whatever gets done, and you're voting on a proposal, if that doesn't end up being built, this all goes back to the beginning. We have to start all over again. So it's very important that we understand the pitfalls of an RFP process and how they don't necessarily fit what we're trying to accomplish here. This is a very difficult to develop site. And so that's why we went with a different process. We went with an RFQ instead. And this is this is used in a lot of other municipalities, and there's a lot of reasons why. But the main reason is because we can't expect somebody to come into this, answer an RFP, and give us a proposal with all the answers right off the bat. It's just not going to happen. We're not going to get that baked into a 1-month process where they're going to have to spend upwards of $100,000 up front in order to get this thing designed, and then come in front of us and say, well, I don't really know how much it's going to cost to build, but I'm going to say that I can get this done for X, and then we're going to approve of it. And then, 4 months later, as they start doing due diligence, well, guess what? They can't get it done because that's what's happened in the past, right? We've had people, and it's not anybody's fault, but it's what happens. You can imagine that you're trying to win a bid. You're going to make it look as good as possible. You're going to promise as many things as possible to make it as shiny as possible. And that's what happens. So in a couple instances, we had projects get accepted that we thought were going to be great, but it ended up being an overpromise because as you get into it, I can't build it for that. I'm not going to make enough income versus what it's actually going to cost to build to make that work. And then in other instances, someone might show up and say, hey, you know what? You want something built here? I can put a Walmart here. How about that? And no one's going to want to see a Walmart there. So we have to understand that there's some different dynamics here at play. And keep in mind also that in the past, we've said to people, look, you build us the best thing. We're going to give you 100% of the sites. And so you've got all that site to make income on. And the public charrette, which is fantastic, by the way, the public charrette process was absolutely the right process. And we've been fortunate to have Hoboken Brownstone Company come through and recognize that public space on their project is going to help everybody, including the rest of the neighborhood, including downtown and other neighborhoods as well. But that's like 30% of the property that you're no longer making income on, right? So we're also expecting them to be able to make all this income to make this project work, but you can only use 70% of the property to make income on, because 30% of that we want to retain. So clearly there's a lot of things to work out here, which is why we did the RFQ process, so that we can work with them as partners. This is all judged on the merit of who they are as developers, their experiences, their work in Hoboken, their capacity, an aligned philosophy. And what this process does is it enables us to work together. City council, city, LDC, community, everybody that's here in support of this project. We're all in favor of this project. And on top of that, we're hoping the state, we're hoping, there's going to be federal funds. We have to show a unified front here because this is very, very important. And so what we'd like to see, and one other piece, by the way, the LDC is not really as involved. I mean, even people in support of it, this is like the last thing that happens after all the approvals go through. It literally passes through for like a split second before it goes to the developer. It's just because of our laws. It's the way it's written. It's not like we're trying to give it tomorrow to the LDC to have. The LDC is never going to hold title to this thing. That was never part of the plan. This was in the RFQ, as Steve mentioned. So with some more of the technical details, I'm just going to hand it off to our attorney because that's a lot easier. He can explain it a lot better than I can. But I wanted to make sure we understood the difference in process and why we're doing it this way.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Andy Brick. I've been a planning and zoning and development attorney for 25 years now. The first half of my career, I represented municipalities solely, such as city council, such as yourself. And in the second half, I've been in private practice, still represent some municipalities. I've had the privilege since the beginning of the year to represent the City of Troy's Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals, and that's been a great experience. Like I said, it's a privilege to do. But I've also represented developers in private practice as well, so I've been on both sides of this. I think the easiest thing for me to do is try and clear up the confusion about the alphabet soup that's being thrown at you in the public tonight. LDC, RFQ versus RFP. The simple answer on why an option agreement is needed in this instance and why the LDC has to be involved in what their role is because of the fact that under your city code, like all cities, you have a Chapter 83, which guides the disposition of city-owned property. There are certain requirements in that chapter. It's the authority to create that chapter is from the city charter, section 50. But Chapter 83 lays out certain provisions on how property can be transferred, which the city council is aware. In this instance, because the city engages in an RFQ process, which brings the developer in on a collaborative basis up front, there isn't a mechanism in Chapter 83 to transfer any type of interest to a developer through the RFQ process. Chapter 83 is designed, and the way it's written, for arm's length transactions. In fact, the methods in there, auctions, sealed bids, highest bidder, all of those provisions in your code are designed to keep people at arm's length so that there's a fair bidding process and then the best bid gets awarded the interest in the property. RFQ, the system, brings the person in and the communication starts on the front end. So as a result of that, there is nothing in Chapter 83 that authorizes you to transfer an interest or an option directly to the preferred developer, in this instance, Hoboken Brownstone. There is, however, a section of state statute which allows the city to transfer an interest in property to a valid local development corp, which you have here in Troy. It's statutory created local development corp. And that doesn't require any of the procedures set forth in Chapter 83. So in effect, the idea of optioning the Monument Square parcel to the LDC bypasses the mechanisms in Chapter 83 that you're precluded from using in this instance because of the RFQ process. So it's a mechanism. It's a means to an end. What's most important, I think, from your perspective as a city council, and again, I've been on the municipal side for a long time, so I understand what your interests and concerns are. You can go to the next slide, is how much control do you retain over this process? In effect, it is your property. It is your property, and you have a vested interest in making sure that it's effectively used going forward in the future. So what happens to all of your enumerated powers throughout this process if an option is granted to the LDC? And the simple answer is there's very little impact to your otherwise enumerated powers as a city council. The property remains owned by the city throughout the entire review process before the Planning Commission, which we'll get into, as well as the permitting process, as well as the final design process and all of the financial attributes of the final deal of whatever it's going to be with Hoboken. The city, it remains city property throughout that process. You also reserve, through the proposed ordinance, a number of your traditional city council authorities over this project. This project is going to require a number of approvals from you, the city council. For example, there is a city road that goes right through the property site. It's more than likely that that road is, they're not going to build around it. There's going to be a requirement that for this project to work, that road be abandoned. That's a city council function. That's something that would have to come back to you for your consideration. It's a traditional power of the city council. That, as well as any type of easements that would be required across city properties, utilities coming in from the city, all of those traditional powers of the city council are still being retained by you as this project moves forward. Most importantly, however, though, as Dylan had mentioned at the charrette, one thing the public made clear they want is a lot of public space. And Hoboken has made an initial commitment in joining this process that the project is going to end up with significant public space in a form that was contemplated by the public input at the charrette. You, as you know, you have complete control over city property. You have the authority to acquire, dispose property on behalf of the city. All of that public space is through either some type of transfer back or lease to the city or whatever the function is going to be. All that public space is going to be within your purview under your traditional authority for oversight for city property. So there's nothing in this process of transferring the option to the LDC that's going to limit any of those other powers that you will retain throughout this process. The process will also, I just wanted to mention, it has to go to the Planning Commission, your city Planning Commission. It may need to go to your Zoning Board of Appeals, depending upon the final design of the project, whether or not variances are required. The Planning Commission will likely be a seeker lead agency, but you as a city council would be an involved agency because some approvals will be required. So under seeker, the State Environmental Quality Review Act, you will be involved in that process as well as an involved agency. And you will, from what I see, it's contemplated that there will be constant dialogue and communication between city staff, city council, LDC with their limited involvement of having the option, and most importantly, the developers who are here this evening, who, my understanding, being in the development field, have a great reputation, and they've done great projects in the past. I think you're going to be very successful working with them. But I just wanted to clear up. We went through most of these already, so I won't go through them again. But I just wanted to convey to you that consideration of granting the option to the LDC isn't going to diminish your powers as a city council. It's just a mechanical means to be able to implement the RFQ process and continue to work with the developer through the approval process. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have regarding the process. I thank you for the opportunity.
We can stop here if you have questions. We're just going to talk about the
next steps comes up.
Next steps. I mean, again, it's an open and transparent process. It has been for 18 months. They'll be in immediately to talk with a historic review committee to talk about finishes. I will make city council updates monthly. Planning commission public hearings, they are public hearings. Any action you take on public elements or anything is going to require a public hearing, or there'll be a privilege of the floor. And there most likely will be IDA participation in this.
So just to sort of fill everybody in on kind of where we are, once this option gets passed, what this essentially does is it provides Hoboken Brownstone Company with the security, knowing that they will have an exclusive right as the preferred developer to negotiate with us, to have this conversation. We haven't even designed a project yet based on the information from the public charrette, because they needed site control to some degree, right? So because we're not voting on a project yet, this is the mechanism that allows them the site control that now says they're ready to invest in they're going to be ready to invest in design. So now we get to sit down with them, design the public spaces, design the private spaces, because what we need to figure out from everybody is how much is this going to cost? How much are we going to have to figure out to fund, right? There's going to be a huge amount of gap financing. So we can't figure that out until we get forward with the design process. That's going to be coming next. It's going to be very exciting. And we have to do it because we've got CFAs and everything else we have to be ready to be applying for in the summer. So we need to have this project fleshed out, financed, and ready to go. We're not even be coming to you for the option to actually happen until a lot later. We need to get this project developed first. So I just wanted to make sure we all understood. We're all on the same page because this is a partnership. This is a partnership between all of you, us, the developer, the community, everybody. We all have to be on the same page. We all have to be communicating here and not sending the wrong message to the development community especially. So thank you so much for your time.
Steve, thank you, Dylan. Could I have your card also? I didn't catch your name.
Sure.
Sorry. Thank you.
And I know, Council President, you had some questions for.
You know, by this point in the day, I usually don't. I apologize.
So, Council President, is this not on? It's not on. You had some questions for me. I just wanted to say, okay. So, why you asked why you were not made aware of the environmental assessment form, although it is part of the seeker, and the this whole process was outlined in the RFQ. You have questions on the actual environmental assessment form, and it's important to remember we are specifically segmenting this, which is an allowed thing to do, because we need to do a seeker approval for the option, but we don't know what the project is. So the seeker is only on the option, and the option will not involve the construction of any residential. That'll come later, and we've outlined that specifically in the ordinance. And
could you hold on that one, Steve? So, yeah, that really honestly is extremely confusing, because the environmental assessment form is part of this legislation. And what you're saying is, okay, the council transfers the property, but there's not going to be any new residential or new non-residential, which would be commercial.
we don't know what the project is, plain and simple. This is just an option on the transfer that allows us to figure out what the project is going to be. And so by law, and Andy let's let the lawyer go.
There's no transfer.
Remember earlier when I said no one likes to talk about seeker? The environmental assessment form before you is to consider the action to grant the option. So the sole action for that environmental assessment form is granting of the option. The development of the property can't occur until after the option is exercised and the project is approved by the Planning Commission. During the approval process, the Planning Commission will likely designate itself as lead agency and give a thorough environmental review on the direct attributes of the proposed project. You don't have the ability to do that now because we don't even know what the project is. But granting an option is an action under seeker, so it does require a lead agency, there is no environmental impact from granting an option. The potential environmental impacts will occur when the project is presented, and that environmental review will be in-depth and thorough and conducted by the Planning Commission with you as an involved agency, because you will also have approval power. So you will be involved in that process as well.
Yep, I didn't finish, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to, I was reviewing the seeker in front of us, but I just wanted to confirm that. So is the main rationale for having a seeker in front of us today is to designate the lead agency?
No.
No, the reason is it would designate you as lead agency, but the reason is because granting an option is considered an action that is subject to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Now, the action itself is granting the option. There's nothing else to analyze because we don't even have a project yet. So it's a real simple seeker analysis. Does the option have any environmental impacts? Well, no, because it's just a board resolution. It's paperwork. The potential for environmental impacts will occur when the project is presented. And then seeker starts all over again, brand new, with likely as the Planning Commission as the lead agency and you as an involved agency. And that's when the nuts and bolts of the environmental review takes place.
And I'm correct to understand that future seeker will come in front of the city council? Steve or whoever's best to answer that.
Yeah, you would be on. There's different types of agencies under seeker. The lead agency has a primary responsibility for review, but
Which will be the Planning Commission.
that we expect so, yeah. But any other agency that has any approvals that are involved, whether it be the ZBA for variances or the city council if easements are required or road abandonments, you're an involved agency, which means you are right there with the lead agency throughout the entire process.
Yeah, and on that note, we will not be approving the final seeker. That's what you're saying.
Right.
Yes or no?
Right. Yes.
Yes.
But you
We
will have.
be.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
There will be a part 2 to this and an egg deck.
And, I guess that's what's kind of confusing. And please let me just finish on my question, because if you look in section 2D, you basically state that the city, bear with me, notice of neg deck as well as a summary of same, which shall be prepared. The requirements for seeker have been satisfied. No further reviews necessary with respect to the disposition. So, essentially.
That's correct.
The EAF, you're stating, fulfills the seeker. The project will be separate, but it will not be coming back to the state council.
There's no additional review required for the option. The long form for this Planning Commission review will come back to the city council to look at, to comment on, but not in a public,
Right,
not
to
a public hearing.
comment. I mean, we're just an involved
Correct.
agency with
Correct.
many others. Councilmember Kennedy. Okay. Further discussion, I truly appreciate the time that's been put into the discussion here, et cetera. I guess, to me, a couple things. The monies. Clearly, the city is not receiving any money. It's an appraised value of $600,000. That was the last appraisal. We are transferring it to the LDC for $0.
You want
I'm sorry, there's no transfer. This is an option. This option it basically gets executed at the very end. We don't have a project. So to say that there's going to be a sale price on no project, and keep in mind, in the past, we're talking about giving 100% of a property to a developer to basically use to make income on. Now we're expecting for them to build us public space. So we haven't priced out any of this. We don't know the financial terms of this deal yet. So to say, give us $600,000, even though there might be $8 million worth of public space that we're going to have to figure out how to build, it doesn't make sense. So keep in mind, we haven't done the project yet.
But
So-
Dylan, what we're doing tonight, I've read it like 3 times. It transfers the property for up to 36 months. There's no money.
No, it doesn't transfer the
involved.
There's that's an option. Again, so this is a misunderstanding. There's an option that can last for 36 months. The property never leaves the city's hands until everybody approves everything, and it literally touches the LDC for a split second. Like for a split second, it's a pass through to go straight to the developer. It doesn't sit with, they never take title. The LDC, I mean, the only way that they take title is literally to be a countersigner on an LDA. That's all it is.
And I get what you're trying to do. I've been involved in so many waterfront development projects.
So then you understand there's nothing bad about
Let me finish. This certainly, we all want to see it thrive. We all want to see it move forward. And I get the frustration. We're frustrated. On this though, I see two major issues. I see the monies, which, and I know you keep saying, what we are doing tonight, if you look at the LDA, the agreement, the land disposition agreement, it has $0. So I get what you're saying. There is no guarantee. The LDC is not going to nicely, turn around and say, okay, we negotiated this particular land development agreement with Hoboken. Now we're going to turn around and give it to the city. So that's number one. Number two, you want to skirt the RFP. That's
Skirt
the
is a
point.
term.
Okay, you want to avoid the RFP. Okay, saying that, included in the RFP, there are requirements, as you mentioned, in what is it, A3D. We are to obtain the next or the most advantageous price. So in section 83, which Andrew raised, that's our disposition section. That particular section requires the city to get the most advantageous amount of money for that property, much like residents have to. You saw tonight with the foreclosures, etc. What this does is it bypasses A3D. So we aren't going to get the most advantageous. And, I know that there's kind of this perception, well, the land's not worth anything. It most definitely is. We're
No one's
putting
saying it's
money
not worth
into the
anything,
seawall. We're putting money into
Do you want us to answer
waterfront.
questions?
So my biggest question, the monies. I mean, obviously, we are not receiving any dollars for the transfer.
I'm sorry, I not sure before.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Councilmember Cummings. I run the meeting, so Councilmember Cummings. Go ahead.
Like out of control, I got it.
Let's see. So yeah, I mean, I think having gone through this process and heard from the community about what people want here, it is significant public space and connection to that waterfront. And it's an incredible site. And having seen these sorts of projects, that value of those public amenities far exceeds any cash that we've ever been offered for this site. And so, to me, quibbling over what the cash transfer is when what's on the table is a development that really respects those public needs and that engages in development of much enhanced public space, both at Monument Square and in its connection to the waterfront. Those things to me are way more valuable. First of all, because it probably cost us a lot more to do it, but also because again, this is what the community has come out and said that they want from the process, not cash dollars.
So it's like what I'm saying, you can do both. I've been involved in many waterfront projects throughout the state. You can have both. You can have environmental protection, economic development, and you could have the developer be a partner in terms of ensuring that the people of Troy are receiving the accountability and obviously the financial responsibility that we have. On a couple fronts, and on that front, this isn't just about money. This is about accountability. And what we're authorizing tonight is to, and I get it, you want to make something happen. You want to make it happen so bad, but we are bypassing Section 83D. Andrew attested to that, our attorney. And that particular section is the council is to obtain the most advantageous price for the property. So here's what I've done. I'm really trying here. I've come up with an amendment that I think will hopefully move this forward and be flexible. What I'd like to do, because I truly believe we need to move forward.
Sure.
So,
Before
yes,
you present your
sure.
amendment, can we let
Can I answer
Oh, I'm
though?
sorry,
No, it's
Dylan,
okay.
absolutely, yeah.
So first off, there were 4 times we tried this, right? The same way. And 4 times you were gonna get $600,000 or something along those lines, and 4 times it failed.
I don't know that.
We went through the RFP process 4 times. 4 times, we went through it the same way.
Correct.
If we wanna hit our heads against the wall a 5th time and see if it works any better, I promise you it won't, because we are not gonna get a response from an RFP that is going to hit all the things you want, and oh, by the way, you pay you $600,000 and make the deal work financially. It's not gonna happen.
That's why I have this amendment.
And
Okay.
I'd like to just add that under chapter 83(1), the purpose of that is B, to sell under such circumstances as will expedite development, rehabilitation, and beautification of property sold. So you're not bypassing around that. That's an intent of chapter 83.
Right.
Well, 83D is to get the most advantageous price. We know that, but, so here's what I've done. For me, representing the people of Troy, what I'm trying to do is figure out how can we move a waterfront development project forward. We have a potentially good developer, but there's nothing in here that states that Hoboken, if they back out, they're out. I mean, there is no, does it stay with
No,
LDC?
they're out and the option stops. We'd have to go through it again.
That is not in it's not in the LDA though. There is no reverter.
There's no LDA.
The land,
The
well, I'm
ordinance.
sorry, the ordinance, the agreement, there's nothing in here that
It's an
states
option
that
through
it
to
reverts.
Hoboken, so it's in there.
Except, honestly, a couple of things. So we need, if Hoboken is to back out, this is a transfer to the LDC. Hoboken has, okay.
It never goes to the LDC unless the Hoboken completes that transaction.
Point of order, please. Keep it down and just have a conversation here.
We have an agreement in front of us. That's my point. So if you want to change that agreement, then that's different. This agreement ties whatever we are doing tonight to the agreement. So I know you keep saying option. We are approving an agreement tonight to transfer the property to the LDC to allow them
Based
to
on a
work
project
with
that has not
Hoboken.
yet been defined. We still have to make the project
Correct.
for you to approve,
Correct.
and then it goes into the option. Then the option gets excited.
Exactly.
Council
So,
President.
what, council member, go ahead, council member.
What I might suggest while we're battling something we don't know, I haven't heard this either, so what I'd like to do is have a chance to listen to what Council President Mantello is proposing. Then when we have all the information, we can make a logical decision based on what she's trying to put forward. And then we can talk about that, because right now we don't know what that is.
Fair enough. So my amendment, a couple of things. I think it will allow transparency. I think also the financial accountability. So what I'd like to add, if you open up the agreement, section 4, you will read, the city hereby authorizes the TLDC's execution and delivery of the land development agreement with the company relating to the project and property, and further authorizes the city's acknowledgement of the assignment of option rights, et cetera, et cetera. Last sentence, the LDA may include such purchase price provisions as TLDC and the company may agree upon, and also include such terms and conditions, and we end up with city grant funding. I would like to add to that section that the final sale of 1 Monument Square, and in parentheses, the land development agreement by the Troy Local Development Corporation to the company shall be subject to approval by the Troy City Council subsequent to at least one public hearing. So A, it does what you're doing. It bypasses the RFP, still keeps us accountable, one public hearing, and then proceeds, this would continue, proceeds from the final sale of said property shall be transmitted within 30 days to the city of Troy. So essentially, what this would do, our financial accountability, transparency, a public hearing, you will not have to RFP because that's one of the key aspects of why this option to transfer to the LTC. But the final sale of one monument shall be subject to approval by the Troy City Council subsequent to at least one public hearing, and the proceeds from the final sale of said property shall be transmitted within 30 days to the city of Troy. Then we are keeping transparency. We are ensuring that the taxpayers' property, the financial accountability, we will be a stakeholder during the process, etc. And in my opinion, it at least gives a little flexibility to move forward. At the same time, the city council does not abdicate its responsibilities on the financial accountability or the transparency. So I'm trying to put it all together to move forward.
Can we ask, is there a second to that amendment?
I put a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second it to put it to a vote.
Okay, we'll take a slow roll on,
We need to discuss. I'd like to discuss this first.
Sorry, discussion. Come on, I can email it, yep.
We have the developers in-house, so it's really important to make sure that whatever amendments you are proposing are actually amenable to them, because this could squash the deal. So can you repeat,
Monica, we're at a motion.
I understand, but I would like you to repeat the terms you just said. So seeing if the actual company is willing to entertain that or not.
Well, if this passes.
So can you repeat
can
it?
Find out, absolutely.
Thank you.
So we would add to section 4, the final sale of One Monument Square, in parentheses, land development agreement by the TLTC, Troy Local Development Corporation, to the company shall be subject to approval by the Troy City Council subsequent to at least one public hearing. So public hearing, council votes. Proceeds from the final sale of said property shall be transmitted within 30 days to the city of Troy. So essentially, it continues to keep the council, our financial, our transparency, our accountability. It does not push it to the LDC without those safeguards. In my opinion, it ensures that the electeds are continuing to be a part of the project with transparency, with accountability. And at the same time, it gives the flexibility to not have to do an RFP. So, and I you know what, Steve, the shaking the head no is honestly not called for. We're trying to work here, so please work with me. I'm trying to figure out how we can move forward and be flexible. To turn around and just say no is really not cool. Yes, Councilman.
In his defense, to assume that him shaking his head is saying no, I think is even more inappropriate. I'm having a hard time refraining from shaking my head no. Okay. This is another time when you presented an amendment without discussing it before time with any of the other council members. Maybe your colleague. I can't believe you're still presenting something. Probably we could say it's premature again, but you're like going. Are you going for the shock value?
It's pretty, council member. If you could let me answer, it's pretty simple.
I know.
I have said since last week. I asked Steve Strikeman a number of questions. We received a presentation tonight. We received legislation on this agreement on Friday. For me, I did my due diligence. I spoke to folks. I'm trying to find a way to still move this forward, but keep our responsibility as council members saying that after seeing the presentation, after hearing some of the folks out there. It's something flexible that I feel after Steve gave his answers to my questions tonight and the seeker, because I actually did want to hit that, I'm not now. So saying that this is based on all the information that we've received, including tonight, it's really not complicated. Two things, a public hearing and obviously the financial accountability.
So Chair, is the underlying reason for your amendment the fact that you don't trust the Planning Commission and the LDC to move forward with public hearings and a proper public process?
This continues our
So yes or no
responsibility. No, this continues our responsibility. If you want to abdicate your accountability, and frankly, tomorrow, the state Senate and the Assembly are holding hearings on what? IDAs and LDCs. You know why? Because of the lack of transparency, because of the lack of accountability. What we are doing tonight is taking a prime piece of property, prime, waterfront and downtown. And what I'm trying to do is figure out a way, how can we ensure that accountability, that transparency, and that financial responsibility that we were elected to do?
Councilman. So I mean, from our discussions, my sense is that there will be opportunity for the council to review this project and take some votes on it next year, no matter what. And so I think it would be good to hear from certainly our lawyer. I think is the initial question is, can we execute an option that then also says, but you can't execute the option without coming back to us? Is that a thing that an option can do?
And the concern I would have regarding the proposed amendment as it's written, I think goes along the lines of what you're saying. If what's being proposed is that the option is conveyed to the LDC, the developer then goes through the entire approval process and spends hundreds of thousands of dollars in approval costs, and then gets to an approval at the end of the process, and then is subject to an effective veto by the city council at the end of the process.
But it would be the final sale. You're
that's the
clearly
point of an
right.
option.
No,
Yeah.
but it would be the final sale. And the final sale, I would hope, any developer, before they go down that path, they're going to find,
Right.
they're going to know what they're going to pay for the property. So
And
you're
I would agree, but the way I heard you propose it was that there was going to be some type of city council vote at the end of the process.
correct.
And
the
if that
final
vote
sale.
is, no, we don't approve the sale, then in effect, you've just asked the developer to take a risk of hundreds of thousands of dollars at his risk to get all the way to the end of the process and then have a vote that says no for whatever reason.
That's not at the end. The final sale will be upon the approval of the city council. That wouldn't happen at the end. So you're saying.
It would be the end of the design process. Obviously, at the start of the building process.
And it's not really a legal issue, but developers need a sense of confidence that when their front end costs, when they make the investment to do the design work and the development work and go through the application process, which in a project like this will be hundreds of thousands of dollars, they need a level of insurance that should they get the approvals necessary, then they can acquire the property. So if you interject at the end of that process, the ability for the city council to say no, and you as a legislative body can act within your discretion, you arguably wouldn't even have to give a reason why you said no. They've just made all of those investments and lost everything because they have nothing. I don't think, I can't speak for Hoboken. I don't think any developer would agree to an LDA that gives a city council an effective veto power at the end of the process.
That is not saying at the end. So, what you're essentially saying is that no matter what, that final sale comes at the end. And that's not accurate.
I think this proves, again, it shows that there's a disconnect here on what this actual process is. And this proves it. None of this happens.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
if you could use the mic.
Sure. I think this is further evidence that we don't quite have a connection here on what this process is. Well, if you do, then you would understand that what you're asking essentially is for a developer to say, under the assumption that as long as they do everything that's been asked of them, right, the public has spoken. The public has given us a charrette. We've been through this 4 different times. 4 different times. The public has given a charrette. Everyone here is in support of a project that they want to see going forward. And you're talking about your duty to the public. So
You're lobbying. You're lobbying.
I'm not a political person.
you're
And this is,
lobbying
and
right
this,
now.
and what the
You're
problem is, I
lobbying.
want you to understand that
You're lobbying.
please let me talk, because what I need you to understand something. What we are sending a message to is not just everybody in this room. We are sending a message to all the different developers who are looking at Troy, that want to do business here in Troy. We are saying we care more about making a scene in front of people and doing the same Troy crazy thing than we care about actually improving the city. And that to me is one of the most heinous things we can get across to people. It's scary, not just to Hoboken. And I promise you, it's scary to everybody here, including all of us who work day in and day out on these issues for the city, not for political reasons, not for anything else. We do it regardless of who gets elected or who's in power. And I think, no, I'm serious, because this is very important.
But you're, seriously, thank you. You're over the line.
Council President?
Yep.
I did have some general questions, not about the amendment, that I was looking to get answered, and I appreciate you all being here. I hope we can continue to keep, remain level-headed through all of this. I understand this is, a bit of a challenge, and I think what we are trying to do is our due diligence. So thanks again. One of my questions was related to the charrette meetings, and I don't know who's best to answer this, but how many charrette meetings were there? I was, just for the record, I was in attendance at, I think, the final meeting. I know there was a full audience there. Were there several meetings?
There were 4 events. There were 3 at the initial 3 sessions where we looked at the project and designed it basically, roughly. And then it was several months later that the community came back and looked at the final iteration and was overwhelmingly in support of that charrette.
And I heard the lawyer reference, and excuse me, I didn't catch your name, with regards to easements. As we all know, that an easement would require city council approval. What is the level of certainty? Will there be a requirement? Excuse me. Will we be having easements related to this project?
And I'll answer that it's likely that there will be easements for it, whether it's for the street, whether it's for utilities across the property. It will be. There's utilities across the property.
Also, because the project contemplates so much public space, and one of the requirements from the charrettes is access to the river, there would be likely public easements that would require to be conveyed to the city that you would accept to allow public access across the public spaces as well. So.
And were there, with regards to the original RFQ, there were conditions in the RFQ related to the public access? Is that correct? I don't know who's best to answer that one.
Yeah, the RFQ clearly stated that the design would have to comply with the vision in the charrette, and the city council through this ordinance is even giving the authority for the planning commission, who doesn't have the authority to ensure that something whatever the final development is complies with the charrette. You are through this ordinance giving them the authority to ensure that it complies with the charrette. So there will be easements for public space across the public space.
And, and on that note, Councilmember December, if you look in the language in our ordinance, it's extremely specific. And I know you keep saying option. I know you keep saying, there's a little wiggle room here and there, not you.
Thank you.
No, not you. But the administration, but there isn't. What we're being asked is in black and white in front of us. So, the whole, just please continue on the path. It's in writing in front of us. What we agreed to tonight is in this language in front of us. And that's why I was trying to give a little flexibility. And I guess, my biggest question, why is Hoboken not paying for the land up front? I mean, even if they said
What options are for.
200,000, I'm just asking. It's just a question. I mean, have you had conversations with Hoboken, or
We've never
is it
spoken
going
with
to
them.
be handed over for $1?
We have not talked at all about price.
Not at all.
We are waiting for a project. We're looking for
Then
the
why
funding.
start the RFP if you're not talking price, right? I mean, kind of.
We are not skirting the RFP.
Okay.
We don't know. We don't know what
Okay.
there was no highest bidder. That's what it is. It's not whether the price is $1,000 or $10,000 or $1 million. There was no public process of bidding, so we can't use that section of law.
But you've had no conversations with Hoboken regarding price, correct?
None.
Chair.
And to be clear,
Chair.
largely.
Are you gonna follow?
Councilmember Kennedy, then Councilmember Cummings.
Do you have any public record opposing the current strategy or supporting your current strategy through amend?
What are you asking, Councilmember Kennedy?
I'm asking-
Folks have
no.
contacted me. I'm not sure what you're looking for.
Do you have any public record?
Residents
written
have
record? Do you have any
Why do I
official?
need a written record? Where?
Because people came out and supported the current
And
strategy.
that's
I'm asking you if
fantastic.
anybody has opposed the current strategy.
Yes, I've received phone calls from folks who are very concerned about the price, about the transparency, about the fact that the LDC still does not have minutes on their website for 2 months. And they are concerned that this process is taking it out of the public light. And, if you went out there and spoke to people, people would tell you there are concerns. So what I was trying to do was address those concerns. They don't need to come down to a meeting. They express their concerns.
I don't trust to believe you.
Okay,
That-
then
everyone
look on
else.
social media, please.
Council
You're
President.
really being on track.
Point of order, can we get back to
We're being
business?
Yeah, you're getting off track. Councilmember
I mean,
Cummings.
so I think these are both issues that do need to be addressed. The two things in your amendment. I think certainly the first one, I think largely has been in terms of there will be a public process that will include the council, including some votes on the easements. The price one certainly is a question. It's not something I feel comfortable debating on the floor and wordsmithing on the floor. So I would join you in supporting an amendment on that once we work out the details of it, but I'd rather not do that on the floor. So I'm wondering if we can move this forward for the purpose right now and then make that amendment at the next meeting once we've had the opportunity to negotiate.
I would then say table only because I can't, I want to support moving forward. I understand.
Madam
I'm
President?
saying that. Let me just answer his question, but more importantly, I need those assurances without putting the stamp of approval on the language. And this is the whole thing. I mean, we received the language, Steve, you sent it on Friday. We got the legislation. I mean, I've read it twice. I want to try to put some flexibility in that language that what I feel would assure the people who have reached out to me, et cetera, for more transparency and accountability.
Did they reach out
Andrew,
to you
hold on one
before or
second.
after the article when you created concerns that misled the
They
public?
saw it online, Councilman.
The article, right?
They saw the
Your
legislation,
statements?
the
Oh,
legislation, yeah.
I wanted to clarify my prior remarks, and I think it'll be helpful to the board's deliberation. Your amendment proposes two things. One, a city council vote at a further down the road in the process. We don't need to debate where, and also that payment of proceeds, any proceeds to the city are paid within 30 days. My first comments were pertaining to the first aspect of that. So let me just add for the board, and I think it'll help your deliberation, putting a time frame on when proceeds to the city have to be made. You wouldn't even have to do it at 30 days. You could require it that it be done at closing. So saying that all proceeds to the city have to be provided to the city within 30 days of final transfer of property is something that's fairly routine and appropriate. I just wanted to clarify that.
Options with the pass-through those proceeds can and should return to the city.
Well, any proceeds that would be going to the city, she had suggested a time frame. So what I'm saying is that's perfectly appropriate to put a time frame on when the city gets paid what they're going to be paid.
Yeah, I actually thought of it because I have seen other agreements. So what I tried to put in this agreement was what I felt, would ensure that continued transparency and accountability and not put it solely on the LDC.
In broader perspective, I think we're relying on the LDC to do a lot of development of properties. And there's a lot of work to do there. And I think we all want to see some of the properties that they currently control be developed. And so I think this is another place where I think we should talk about, should there be a shared revenue, or should there be all to the city, or and again, back to the initial question, it may well be that our payment comes in the form of public amenities, not in the form of cash.
Right.
So those are all
but
questions that are unknown.
Right. And if that was the case, you're right. But if that was the case, that would essentially, still make that final.
In fact, as I've seen, I would prefer that, to be honest. I'd rather that we get better and stronger amendments, amenities at that site than some cash that we will then probably have to. We could probably do maybe what they could do for $400,000. We could do for the 6.
And this is saying sale. So if that sale was predicated on amenities, that would be the sale. So it is.
I mean, it's predicated on following through on the promises within the RFQ, which do include public amenities, public space, access to the waterfront. Those are all outlined in the RFQ that they responded to, that they will be held accountable to. And so we have guarantees that there will be those public spaces. We have guarantees that because those spaces exist, it'll come back to us for a vote. My sense is that we have all of this. I think there should be some discussions about whether there will be a cash transfer as well, and I don't think here's the place to have those conversations right now. And so, we could put a clause in saying if there's cash, it comes to the city.
Well, no, it's not
does
just
that affect your
predicated
process?
on the cash coming to the city. It's predicated on the council having a public hearing and approving that sale. So whatever the sale is, if it's amenities, if it's cash, the final sale of 1 Monument Square by the TLDC to the company shall be subject to approval by the Tri-State Council subsequent to.
I guess I don't understand what the purpose of voting on an option is if it's going back to us for final approval. I think the point of this is to have that ability to work assurance in that assurance. So, to the attorney's point, doesn't that put us back in the position where we have this sort of leverage over anyone taking this decision? And I think I think some of the questions here make sense. I understand some of the things that you're saying, but I think from the perspective of what we're talking about here is we want to provide that ability to get this project done without having that overhang.
I get that, but we still don't abdicate all of our responsibilities. 83D, I mean, you can't just, put our heads in the sand on this. It's in the code. 83D specifically says to obtain the most advantageous price. So what I'm trying to do is still abide by the code, abide by my oath to try to make this as transparent as possible without just saying, okay, LDC, it's your baby and, we're a partner, but we're not responsible for any of that oversight, any of that transparency. So I'm trying to be flexible in terms of abiding by the code, which you can't just say, okay, we'll transfer it, because the whole purpose of this transfer is to not RFP it. So what I'm saying is, okay, we won't RFP it, but at the same time, we're still gonna abide by 83B, we're still gonna abide by our property dispositions. I mean, we don't have reverter language in there. I'm not including that. That could be, honestly, like, just a total, forget it, run away. So I'm trying to still do our job, but yet, let the LDC run with this.
Chair, and I appreciate, what your intentions are here. And I just, for the record, my line of questioning was related to the council's involvement, right? Is when we're talking about easements, if we're talking about grants, if we're talking about seekers, there's a lot of places where the city council has a role and a responsibility. And I think it's important that we have that responsibility. And that was my line of questioning, was to make sure there is continued involvement from the city council.
Yeah, and I agree, and we're always going to have that, but what we are doing tonight is relinquishing our powers and relinquishing our transparency and accountability authority.
Sure.
So I'm trying to keep some of that to ensure that the code is being abided by and that we are being transparent.
Sure.
Councilmember.
No, we're not, and I would hope that you would stop misleading the public. Councilmember Gully, are you in support of this amendment?
We have not gone to the slow roll. We have not. We have not gone to the slow roll.
It's a discussion.
It's further
Are you in support of the
discussion.
amendment?
Further discussion.
Council President,
Yes, Councilman.
it's been a long night here, and this discussion go back and forth like a tennis ball. But the reality is, we tried 4 times to develop this property, ran into problems each time, whether it be through the council's vote, or whether it be through the project, or whether it be through the citizens fighting that project. I do not like giving up control of the property totally, but in reality, we're not giving up all the control. There's some pieces in there that protect us. As the money goes for the 600,000 that we've been promised, and I don't know how many budgets and never received, it's always been a thorn in our side as it just sat there in anticipation of getting something that we never got out of that property. However, with this property being developed, there's a lot of value to the public space, the engagement of the additional pieces that create a spot for our public to go to. And that, I don't know if that's on the back of Hoboken Brownstone as they develop, or is that the city gonna pay for that in that development? That's something we need to know, because are they gonna institute a value of that property towards the public for the 600,000 that we say that property is appraised for and worth? I don't know, I don't see that in there. I do see that there's expectations that they will stay to the charrette, which I would definitely hold the LDC and the planning department to, because this is what the people of Troy have spoken for and said, hey, it might not be perfect, but this is what we want. And I realize that they won't get everything, and I hope the public understands that not everything is gonna be possible in that charrette, because you give your Christmas list to everybody, but you don't get all the gifts. It's just the way life is. But if we can draw most of that out and give something of a look that and a feel that has that same warmness of using the riverfront and using that piece of property to guide us all the way up that riverfront, I think that's a tremendously good thing. As far as Hoboken, I would not blame them for being a little cautious, because so many other people have invested so much money as developers and have just, spun their wheels, and it's difficult to see that. So while I feel that we have an obligation to protect the residents of the city with this piece of property that they own, we also have to understand that sometimes you have to barter the deal instead of pay for the deal. And I'd like to see more information on what Hoboken, we haven't even spoken, I don't even know what's in their head as far as their vision or what they are looking to do to engage with the city. And I think that needs to be done. And I am going to support it to move forward on one ground, that I do want to see an amendment. I do want to see some verbiage and communication that maybe we can work something out that would be a comfortable fit between the council, the administration, the LDC, and Hoboken, because we've played around with this project for years, and it's time to put it in action and get something done there that makes sense. But that would hold the LDC to a certain standard of transparency and a value to the residents to be on point with what they discuss with Hoboken and they bring to the table. And I would like to know what they're bringing to the table and be aware of all this, not find out that something in April comes out in November. I want to know about it when it happens. So for tonight, I am going to support moving it forward. I am going to have more questions. I think, Council President, you brought a great amendment to the table that needs to be tweaked a little bit, because after all, it's a starting point. But I think that we have to look at this as a project that we want completed, and we don't want to have combative conversations over it every time we come to the table. Let's start working on getting results. And I think we need to do the right things here.
Thank you, council member. So we're gonna, further discussion, we'll take a slow roll on, this is on the amendment. It's a slow roll. Council member Gully.
I would like to see the amendment tweaked a little bit to better fit. So I'm gonna vote no on the amendment.
How would you amend it?
I would sit everybody down to the table and say, how does this work with us? And let's put it together and let's get it done.
Okay.
And that's what I would do.
Councilmember Garrett is not here. Councilmember Parator, absent. Councilmember Cummings.
Just to explain my vote, again, I think these are important things, and I will make a public commitment to work with you to make sure both these issues are addressed before the next meeting. But I'll vote no on this particular.
Okay. Councilmember December.
I'll echo my colleagues' comments and vote no.
Councilmember Kennedy.
No.
Okay, I vote yes. The amendment fails 4-1. On the original ordinance, I'm going to call a slow roll. Councilmember Gully.
I am gonna vote yes on the expectation that we can sit down and work out some sort of adjustment to the agreement that fits the concerns of the council president and the people of Troy and Hoboken Brownstone, so that they're excited to work in our city.
Okay, Councilmember Garrett, absent. Councilmember Parator, absent. Councilmember Cummings.
Yes.
Councilmember December.
Yep, just to explain my vote, I want everyone to remember this is a very exciting thing we've got here in the city, and we have seen a lot of, failures in the past, and I think we've got a really important opportunity here, and there's a lot of folks here in support, and I think we are all trying to do our work, and I'm looking forward to that continued work, and I vote in the affirmative.
Okay. Councilmember Kennedy.
Yeah, I will vote yes, based on the understanding that this is only an option to transfer and that there will be full transparency throughout the process, and the city council will not be relinquishing any control under the current strategy. I thank you for the administration and Brownstone Company Hoboken Brownstone Company for taking a chance on Troy. And I hope this moves forward as is.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. I think a lot was discussed tonight, obviously, and there's a lot of passion. There's a lot of frustration. I get it. 4 RFPs on the 5th. We want to do everything humanly possible to get this done. I get that. However, my job and our job as council members are to ensure accountability, transparency, and ensure that the financial accountability is being upheld. Stating that, moving forward, we all want to see the project have environmental. We all want to see it have waterfront access. We want to see economic development. But that doesn't mean that we use that frustration to relinquish our responsibilities. No matter what, you keep saying option. I've heard it a million times. There is an agreement in front of us. That agreement ties us to specific, very specific language. We are out of the picture. We are going to potentially be a partner. We'll be a partner. We are, I did not interrupt you, Councilmember Kennedy. But Councilmember Kennedy, I have the floor. Please, Councilmember Kennedy, honestly, I do not want.
Please, can we get through this?
Stop. Stop. Councilmember Kennedy, I did not interrupt you. Stop it. Stop saying that. we have a responsibility to the taxpayers. My job is to ensure the transparency. The amendment that I put forth, I tried to be flexible. We have a code in front of us. What you have voted on tonight is to essentially not abide by that code, 83D, which is to obtain the most advantageous price. That's our job, to follow the code. By not putting out an RFP, I get it. Then we can directly deal with the developer. So what I said was, okay, I'll put aside my concern about not putting out an RFP, and I'll try to continue to hold our responsibility, hold our transparency, our commitment to the taxpayers, okay? So I interjected the one public hearing, and obviously the amendment had the sale. Trying to be flexible, but saying that I understand you did not want to support. I do hope that this project does move forward. I do so feel, though, that what we are doing tonight does not continue the transparency and accountability that this city council would have done. Our job was to oversee this property and ensure that obviously the taxpayers were getting their financial accountability, their financial and the transparency of the public hearing. So saying that, while I'm disappointed, we'll have to see how this moves forward. I am disappointed that, the council, you are tied to this agreement. And the agreement is in black and white. And you can say option, and you can fluff it over, and you can say that we have responsibilities. We're always going to have the responsibilities on the parkland, on the lands abutting the property. But what you are doing tonight is you are handing over the LDC some and a lot of our responsibilities. And I get you want to see a project, we all do, but it doesn't mean that we just bury our heads in the sand and say, go ahead, LDC, have your day. So that's my feelings, I vote no. All right, ordinance 115 passes 4-1. Ordinance, resolution 81 is withdrawn. Resolution 82, resolution regarding the exploration of a community choice aggregation program and entering into an administration agreement with the Municipal Electric and Gas Alliance MEGA. Councilmember Cummings. Do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember December. Do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Gully. Discussion, I know that MEGA is here. We would ask, hi. So sorry, we should have put your reso up front. Come on up. Come on up. Thank you so much for waiting. If I knew you were waiting, I would have cut it to at least 5 minutes.
Oh, that's all right.
Thank you for waiting.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your patience.
You're welcome.
If we could ask folks, we still have business. If you could bring it into the
Super
hallway.
exciting business. You know what they don't know is this also impacts them.
This is super
We should have put this
exciting.
first. Always, right?
Jackson, leave one door open, please. Thank you.
Hi. What I would like to say to you is so Municipal Electric and Gas Alliance, MEGA, we've served municipalities in New York State for 20 years with energy aggregation. MEGA is a not-for-profit local development corporation, and my boss, our board of directors are municipal officials. And so it made sense for us in the last couple of years to get into community choice aggregation, a residential bulk purchasing of electricity. We had immense interest in the capital region. There was a lot of community activism to start bringing MEGA's attention to the desire for CCA in your region. And at the moment, there are 10 municipalities that have committed and formed a capital region aggregation representing over 43,000 eligible households. This ranges from the north, Glens Falls, all the way south to Bethlehem. And I really hope that, Troy can participate in this process. Just a quick clarification of timeline. So those municipalities right now have already taken the step that you're considering recommending to the full council, which is the signing of an administration agreement. That agreement, I just want to be clear, does not obligate you to move forward with CCA. All it is the commitment to work with Mega if you do move forward. And I do know that you have had this recommendation made for you after an interview process of the various administrators. So I guess what I would like to say to you is just a moment on timeline. We're just asking that if you do decide to go forward, that you sign that agreement by January 1st, because that will allow us and the other municipalities who are engaged in making this decision now to join that existing aggregation without slowing down the existing aggregation too much.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
I thank you so much.
Of course.
Because I really had to do my homework on this one.
It's complicated.
It's super complicated, and I went on NYSERDA's website and learned more about the whole. But then Mega, I didn't realize what Mega was all about.
Sure.
So I went online, did a ton of research. There are a number of municipalities similar to us as part of this.
Correct.
So we essentially would be part of that nonprofit, your nonprofit. We would be part of that group. And then do you go, where does it go after that?
Sure. So really the next step after the administration agreement is signed is that Mega goes out into the community and starts doing education. So ultimately so in general municipal law, for you to give yourselves the authority to do this bulk purchase with your residents and small businesses, you have to pass a local law. You have to give yourself that authority. So clearly you need to have.
I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
I was nervous that.
No, that's not tonight. No.
I totally get it, and that's why I called the Nash.
Great.
We actually talked quite a bit last week.
Great. So, and that's actually, our model is significantly different than some others in the state, because again, I work for municipal officials and have for a long time. And our model is, if we're going to have a public hearing and pass a local law, we want to do our education first. We want to fill this room up again with people hopefully saying, yay, renewable energy, or no, government overreach, or whatever they want to tell you. It's just generally not that interesting, but sometimes they show up. So the next process is really that 60 days of education and outreach, which is what we're doing right now with the other communities. So that process happens sort of towards the end of that process. Part of that is the public hearing, and then after you have the opportunity to hear from your constituents, then the local law happens. The reason I've given you that timeline is because it is an aggregation, and that request for proposal that we do to find a good source for supply. Because we're trying to use that mass, that aggregate, we need to sync everyone's timeline. And so that's where, the existing 10 municipalities we committed them to a timeline, but we did say there are 3 large cities in the capital region that if they decide to participate, we will slow down and wait for them. And they all said, okay, fine, thank you. Great, we love it. More the merrier, but we're not going to wait forever.
And that was my question.
Yes.
If we were to try to help you, it obviously helps us.
Correct.
Because, strength in numbers.
Correct. Okay. Yes, and I will say, and I'm not speaking out of turn, I'm sure this is being publicized, Albany is in the same place that you are right now, making a similar decision. They did interviews just like you did, and they're making a recommendation to their council and figuring out how to proceed. They've been given the same timeline as Troy, and Schenectady is in a similar situation, trying to understand where they are.
Chair.
Councilmember.
Thank you. So the municipalities that have already signed their administrative agreement, they don't include Schenectady and Albany yet, but they're in the same.
Yeah. So that 43,000 is excluding others.
So if the 3 cities get involved, we'll have a lot of
much bigger
in that purchasing power.
Yes, it will double the size of the aggregation.
Right. And
So
just to start that education process, Council President. A little bit. What is an eligible household? How do you calculate that number? How many households in Troy are eligible?
Sure, right there. Oh, that's a zinger. So eligible households. So community choice aggregation is about adding choice. So if someone in your community has already elected to leave National Grid for their supply, our assumption is that they did their due diligence and they intentionally made a choice, whether that was, I want to access 100% renewable electricity, or I just think I want a stable price, I'm going to get a good deal. So if your residents or small businesses do not receive their electric supply from National Grid, they will not be automatically included. They can choose to participate in the program, but they're not going to be in the opt-out model. And again, that's because we need to honor their existing choice. And that's something that when people hear that, it's a big sigh of relief for them, because like, I went out and made that decision, now you're taking that decision from me. No, we're offering the opportunity to investigate the existing default, which is currently National Grid. And we've never gone out and said as a community, what other options do we have? If we switched everybody, what does that look like? And what value can we bring? And so that's the conversation we're having. But to finish your question, so that's one piece. And so it's residential customers who are with National Grid for their supply. It's small businesses. So small by National Grid standard is 2,000 kilowatt hours a month or less. So for those of you that are energy nerds, that's businesses who are non-demand. So it's pretty small. You do have a number of them in Troy. I forget how many off the top of my head. I sent you the data, but I don't have it off the top of my head. 600 is what National Grid is saying. There are some exceptions to that. Most of your religious institutions, there's an exemption in the tariff, so they would be included even if they were larger. Your veterans organizations, and I don't know how many farms you have, but you might have some urban farms, and they might have somehow qualified, though I'm not sure because it's probably not. Probably not, yeah.
They're ineligible for this, or they're eligible?
No, they would be that. This is the participating pool.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So who's ineligible are the larger businesses, the ones who are the big energy users. And the state's theory on that is that those energy users already have enough clout to go into the market and negotiate good deals. And they may have the sophistication and the staff to do so. The average residential customer and small business does not. And so the way that we get them that same market clout and power, or even more, is by bringing them all together, bringing experts to negotiate the contract, and creating competition. So that's really what this whole process is about. I didn't finish answering your question, did I?
You mostly did.
Okay.
Do you want to go at all?
Yeah, so you're right. So there's one other piece, which is important. Back in February of 2015, New York decided that we really needed to pay attention to the predatory practices that were happening in the retail, so that the residential energy market. And so New York decided that if anyone who is going to serve low-income customers, and they define and I'm sorry, I'm getting into the weeds. They define low-income customers as those who are enrolled in HEAP. Not eligible, but they've had to raise their hand and enroll in HEAP. So those customers have to be guaranteed a savings if they leave the utility for supply. So any of those customers, it's a difference of a penny. They have to be guaranteed a savings. So that means for the CCA, we cannot guarantee that they would be included because they're receiving a benefit right now. And that would mean that we have to negotiate a contract where that company is willing to make a guarantee that they won't pay a penny more than their existing. It is something that I have spent a long, and I
able to find savings for
yes.
Eligible.
So here's what I can tell you. I have spent a huge amount of time. So we have 21 communities in the southern tier that are already in an aggregation. I spent a huge amount of time trying to do this for the first aggregation. I did not succeed. I'm not sure if we can get there for this time. We are still working on it, but I'm not going to stand up here and tell you it's super easy. We understand why we failed last time, and so we know what kind of angles we need to use. But this you guys are leading. This is new in New York State, so we don't have an amazing everything you could want. We're going to build. I know. And so, right. And the other thing I do want to say, because there's only one CCA that's on their second contract, right? And that's in Westchester County, and that's, Westchester Power. And we did not do that project. I talked to the person in my shoes there a lot. And what he said is it's really unfortunate because had their low-income residents been allowed to participate, they met the qualifications. But because a guarantee costs money, there was no ability to have a guarantee. So it's tricky, right? And so we have to use some different angles. I think the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act has some interesting language that is ultimately going to give us leverage to make some change, but that is in the real infancy. So we're baby steps.
And I actually was going to ask what the new climate law
Yeah.
has on this. Does it have an impact?
I think it may have an impact on what where the development in the long term, but the immediate term, we have, the ability to offer 100% renewable in the southern tier. We were able to do that at a price differential of only $25 a year, which is, $2 a month, so less than people spend on their coffee. That doesn't mean that every municipality chose that, but it does mean it gave some municipal officials the comfort of saying, I can choose 100% renewables for such a fraction of a cost more. So we can offer that value proposition now. We are constantly moving towards what that new development looks like. And I think that the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act is going to change that, as well as NYPA's new role in the market. Their statute has been expanded recently. There are a lot of things that are changing, and Mega is right there having those conversations.
Sure.
Yes, Councilmember.
Can you just remind me, is the education and outreach requirements within each municipality, or is that the region as a whole?
It's within each municipality. And there are 2 periods of it. There's a 60-day period before you pass your local law, or sort of including your public hearing. And then there's a 30-day period, assuming you go forward, where we go back out and we said, this is the price, this is the terms. Because obviously your residents, it's the most frustrating thing. I've been having all these meetings and the residents come to the meeting, they're like, well, what's the price? Like, we're talking about concept only. We haven't gone out to bid. We have to make sure that you agree on the concept before we even, commit your participate in RFP process. So there is a second period where we actually do know the price and term and supply. And that happens before that opt-out letter goes out. So there's a 30-day period before the next 30 days of opt-out period where they get a letter in the mail. So it's effectively 2 60-day education periods. It's just that one is before the letter and one is once they have the letter in their hand.
And is your educational outreach included in our public hearing, or is our public hearing separate from your educational? Like, would there essentially be 3 with our public hearing, and could you be present?
Oh, sure. So I'm not saying that's the number of meetings. There's 2 discrete periods of education. So that includes, like right now I just dropped off banners in Waterville. We did radio spots. We've done interviews with council members and put them on Facebook. We're doing all kinds of different things because you all know you reach your constituents in different ways. So we have a conversation with you about what that needs to look like and how you reach your constituents and what we've experienced that's effective. And then we work together and put out that plan. But the what we're doing now is what we've learned is, and I don't know what your particular public hearing and how much you follow the rules, but I know what I'm saying is, so my understanding is that public hearing is not a time for back and forth with the public. And so some municipalities run it that way, right? But so what we're proposing is that we do a small presentation before you open your public hearing, so that if your public didn't learn about it until the public hearing, myself or my colleagues are there to answer questions, so that you all aren't left there being like, well, now I have angry constituents and they're going to go do whatever, right? Because often it's just misunderstanding. It's a complicated process, and it can get misconstrued easily. So that's how we propose handling the public hearing. But that's, if not at the end, it'll depend on the timing of your council meetings. It'll be close to the end of the 60 days.
Good.
Sure.
Good. Yes, council member.
Can you estimate how much time of either council member or staff, either total or individually, it was a commitment on behalf of them to get to that outreach plan? Or
within a municipality?
Yeah, was it like a meeting, like a 2-3 hour meetings to design the outreach plan?
No one has done that much. Mostly what we do is we have a template. I think I shared it with you at the interview, actually. We have a template. We fill it out and then we say, what did we miss? Right? What did we miss? And usually what happens is the city will identify a point person. And that person is the person that myself or my colleagues communicate with directly. And then they're to liaise among everyone else, right? And so that's sort of how I find out, I missed the local paper. How did I not know the weekly? I need to put an ad in the weekly and I totally spaced on that. Thanks for reminding me, that kind of thing. So the time is pretty minimal. Some people really get into it. And some people, for example, Bethlehem Public Library, I give them so many kudos. They are rallying for CCA, the public library, right? So it's Depends.
Sure. Are you going to continue calling it CCA, or is there a better name that translates better to what the community understands it to be?
Great question. I mean, we call it CCA, we call it community choice, you know.
Community power.
I mean, we can use whatever colloquialism you'd like. We call it CCA. We've been calling it that. Yeah. And that acronym means a whole bunch of different things. Yeah. When you Google it, it doesn't always come up as the first thing.
Community choice aggregation is very descriptive of what it is.
It is. A lot of people slip and say community choice aggravation, which is really embarrassing.
Well, when I first,
Yeah.
when I first heard MEGA,
Yeah.
I'm like, Make America what?
Oh, no, what Glens Falls, I shouldn't throw him under the bus. Glens Falls asked me if we could say, make electricity green again.
Yeah.
And because they were like, think about it. We come from hydropower as our roots. And I'm like, okay, you guys are going too far here. I think your constituents might not like this. I don't know. Yes.
This is fabulous. So the next step obviously is the signing, and obviously we'll bring this to the regular council meeting after we vote.
Has your attorney reviewed that? I'm not sure. Has your attorney? No. Okay. So,
He will.
okay, great.
He will.
And please connect. They often want some red line, and it's good to have that discussion in
And you're
advance.
the point
And I'm the
person?
point person for
May I
that.
have
Yes.
a card?
Absolutely. I'll grab
All
one
of
and
us may
absolutely.
want one? Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
I must tell you, much more clear. It's much clearer.
I'm sorry it's so
Absolutely.
confusing, but
It's not your fault.
I know.
Council member,
Just
tell me.
if everything works out smoothly, what's the timeline in terms of when utility bills would start getting
Yeah.
shifted over, and how long are you looking at? Is it a 2 or 3 year term?
Sure. So the exact date depends on everyone staying on schedule, which we're good with, but there can be slips, right? So I will say late spring or to late spring is when the opt-out letters will be going out, which means summer for when the supply would hit, right? Sometime around in there. And once we have everyone, once we hit January 1st, I can give you a much more clear timeline, but for now, I'm going to give you a general idea. And then the contract term, and I think I also shared this in the interviews, the contract term is going to be based on the market. So most of the CCAs operating in New York right now have been a 2-year. I don't have any reason to think that it would necessarily be shorter. There could be a reason for it to be longer because it might be financially advantageous, but we'll find out. That's what the RFP process will help us do.
Yeah.
Great.
Council member,
And I remember in some of our previous meetings and discussions on this, I'm trying to clarify, when we're talking about the supply, so if it's mixed or if it's fully renewable, do we as a municipality have the ability to choose what that is separate from the other municipalities that are in the group?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, each municipality. So we will make a recommendation based on the qualifications of the supplier and the price, and that will go out to all the municipalities. But then within municipality, you're deciding which mix,
Right.
which is the default. The important thing for residents to know is that even if you choose 100% renewable or grid mix, they can make the opposite choice.
You just answered my second question.
All right.
last question. Do you find it confusing with the opt-out, or I can imagine that
Mhm.
potentially that could create some confusion amongst residents, so we'll have to really educate.
Yeah, that's why the 2 education periods, that's why the education before the public hearing and local law, that's why, we are, we're very open with residents. We're not trying and maybe not everyone would like this, but we don't, when they call to opt out, I'm not saying, well, let me explain the program to you and why you should stay in. We're saying, okay, great, we're going to opt you out, because I think this is about choice. And if that's the choice they have, that's the choice they've made.
Council member.
May I ask why it's an opt-out instead of an opt-in?
Yes. So so this is not Mega's model. This is the state's model. And the reason is because you can't get the market clout in an opt-in model. We have an opt-in model now, right? So you're with National Grid, and if you want to do something else, you opt into a different you choose to leave National Grid. And that model has resulted in residents overpaying, the market being open to predatory practices, and generally residential customers paying too much since deregulation in the 90s. And so the Public Service Commission's way to address both the predatory practices and access to renewables is community choice aggregation.
So if this is passed, you're saying that everybody will be put into this program?
All of the automatically eligible and small businesses. Automatically eligible. So if they've already made a choice to leave National Grid for their supply, we're not taking that choice away from them.
So it's only people that are still with National Grid?
Correct.
Because there's numerous companies.
That's right. And we are honoring, that's right. And we're honoring those existing choices.
And those people also have an opportunity to opt in.
They do.
To the program.
They do and they have. They do and they have.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, that's great. That's clarity. I just wanted to. Sure.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Kennedy.
How many pricing options did Southern Tier got? And was the green you said costs a little more than existing average, and then other brown versions saved money? Or? Yeah.
So they both beat the 5-year average of the utility. I don't want to call it the brown option, but the standard grid mix, because there sometimes can be renewables in it. So the standard grid mix option beat the 1-year average. And that's why those municipal officials felt comfortable. Again, it was a $25 difference between and it was for 2 years, and everyone can opt out. And some people, I will tell you, we did have people, so there were 6 communities, which was 36% of the aggregation, that chose 100% renewable. And there were a number of people in those communities that opted down. They didn't opt out. They said, I don't want the green. I want to stay in the CCA. I want the fixed price. I want everything else about this, but I opt down. So people did take that option. Less people opted up in the communities that didn't offer 100% renewable than opted down. So that gives us an interesting data point. But yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Further discussion. This was wonderful.
Great.
Please continue keeping us in the loop.
Absolutely.
Obviously, this will go to December 5th should it pass.
Great.
Yes.
I will bring my cards up to you at some point here.
Thank you. Councilmember.
I just had one more point, just as maybe not for Megan, but for all of us here, my recommendation would be, and I know we've got a lot of active neighborhood associations. I think whoever that point person is, probably someone in the sustainability task force, I think it would behoove them to make sure we're getting out to the neighborhoods, Lansingburg, South Troy, all the places we have. I think that's a great starting point for that education.
It's an awesome idea, and we need to utilize them. Yep, perfect.
For the record, I just want to point out that there was a lot of time and energy put in already up to this point, and I do want to thank the people involved. And it was a lot of brain.
Crash course.
Who in particular?
And we're gonna
name the names.
Name the one that's here.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle.
Oh, I was like, where'd she go?
Thank you, Michelle. And moving forward, we're going to need you. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
She's there.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Don't forget, we do have a public hearing for our budget. So seeing that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Motion, Councilmember December. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second, Councilmember Kennedy.